Okay, so today we're going to deal with rationalizing the denominator part 2 because it's going to get a little bit tougher. So as a review, look at the question root 3 over 2 as a review of last section we dealt with. So to rationalize the root 3 over root 2, that's a fraction. Root 2 is in a denominator. We have to get rid of that root 2 in a denominator, so we multiply it by that root 2 top and bottom, that's what we've done, and then you multiply through, and that's what we will get. That's very simple. The reason that is simple is that the denominator is a single term, root 2. There's nothing added, nothing subtracted, and that's what that is. But if we come across a question like this, where we have a root 2 minus 1 as a denominator, then there is another kind of a technique that we need to know. Now, the first thing is that there is a concept called or term called conjugate. So we have to use the conjugate of root 2 minus 1 in order to rationalize the denominator. Now, you would ask, what is the conjugate of root 2 minus 1? Now, actually, it's not necessarily, conjugate is good for any of the two terms that you can think of. So the conjugate of root 2 minus 1 is root 2 plus 1. So basically, the conjugate any term, so a plus b is actually a minus b, okay? So conjugate of a plus b is a minus b. Okay, simple as that. That's all it is. So if we want to deal with this, we multiply top and bottom of that fraction. So root 3 over root 2 minus 1. Not by only root 2 anymore, but by root 2 minus 1, because that's the entire radical. The denominator is part of the fraction. So we're going to multiply that by root 2 plus 1 and root 2 plus 1. Remember, top and bottom, we have to do it both. Okay, all right. So, and then at this point you just go through and you multiply, and as we've done before, so that would be root 6 on top plus root 3. Now, the reason we are multiplying the denominator by the conjugate is that when you do this, when you do the math, and you go through each of these multiplication that we've done before from the last couple of sections, you realize that you will end up getting no radicals in the denominator. So let's go through this. Root 2 times root 2, I'm going to do one step at a time. That would be 2. Okay, root 2 times 1 is just root 2. And then I'm going to deal with the 1 piece right here now. So negative 1 times root 2 is negative root 2. Negative 1 times 1 is negative 1. Now let's simplify this. Top, we have root 6 plus root 3. Denominator, look what we have. Root 2 minus root 2, that's 0. 2 minus 1 is just 1. Okay, so simple as that. The radicals are gone. Now we don't have to even write the 1 in the denominator, so you can just write it as root 6 plus root 3. And that's the final answer. Okay, so it's very important, if you have two terms in a denominator like that, you do have to multiply top and bottom by the conjugate of that. And a conjugate, you always change the sign. So by the way, the conjugate of a plus b is a minus b, and vice versa. So there, if it's positive, you multiply it by a negative. All right, so that's what you would do, and you go through the math and make sure you don't make mistakes, and then simplify, and you will get that.